the Quiet Earth film. Our movie starts with someone, his name is Zach, and he wakes up in a small hotel room. When he turns on the radio, he does not find any working stations on it. He connects to the reception, but he does not respond to it. And he rides his car and walks. On the way, he stops at a gas station, but there are no workers there. And the market will also be empty. Zach is looking for someone in the place who only finds an electric kettle. And the water in it was boiling, and the bathroom also went to find it closed but empty, and there was no one inside it. After that, Zach moves into the car and keeps honking, but also, he doesn't find anyone in the street until he stands in front of his house and moves towards him. And when he breaks the door to enter, he also finds the house is completely empty. It is clear that his friends have been around for a short time, but they suddenly disappeared. Zach comes out and moves, by car again, and he walks on a highway outside the country. Suddenly a truck parked in the middle of the road appeared in front of him, and he was going to mess with it. The truck is also empty, and Zach tries to talk to someone on the radio who is there. Of course, there's no answer after that. Zach arrives to the city, and again, he doesn't find any people there. All the cars, houses, and shops are completely empty, and he will find a large pile of a building that he knows exploded after a passenger plane crashed into it. But he also finds no trace of any corpse. Zach moves back to the Space Research Center where he works, and of course I don't find anyone. And then he opens the computer to communicate with the research center in the world, but he didn't respond to him. Of course, now you don't understand anything. But seconds, and you begin to understand. At the same time, a paper was produced from the edition with information on the follow-up of the electric torch project. Then Zach will go down to the ground floor, and he sees the devices that are there. It is written on the computer that the operation of the electric igniter is complete. Of course, Zach doesn't understand what's going on, nor do we. Zach then arrives in the network control room, and he finally finds a person named Byrne there. Her watch was sitting on a chair, but the joy did not linger. As soon as he turns the chair, he discovers that Byrne has been dead for a while, to the extent that his body is decomposed. Immediately, the alarm bell sounds warning of a radiation hazard in the laboratory, and he'll lock. Zach runs at the door to get out, but the lab is locked up, and he has an idea to come up with it after he sees oxygen pipes and a fire flame, and exactly as you have in mind. Zach decides to blow up the door so he can get out. Therefore, he turns on the torch, opens the gas pipes, takes away and takes a recorder in his hand. When he turns it on, he hears a message from someone who is talking about the danger of the electric torch project, and that he should have been stopped. Here he records with his voice the current situation, and he says that there is no one left in him other than him living on the whole planet. And Zach understood what was happening, and we still don't. Before Zach finishes his recording, the pipes burst heavily. Zach can escape from the lab, and then the whole building, and this is through the sunroof. Zach is here on a radio station. Somehow, he finds a local station, and from the live broadcast, he sends a message in his name and its address and number. And this is because if anyone still lives, communicates with him. We see him then writing his name, address, and number on a bulletin board, and he waits at home next to the phone in the hope that someone will call him. Unfortunately, this is not happening. Then we see him riding in the police car, and talking in the microphone is also in the hope that someone will hear it. But all this talk was without result. And when the night comes, a vitriol comes out in the rain and plays the instrument, so that someone may still live with him on the planet and hear him. Zach despairs. He returns home once and is very upset. But for a moment he decides that he must change the place where he lives. And this is since he remained alone in the world and lives his life. The second day of the star in a large and beautiful house in the most beautiful place in the city. He breaks the breakfast of the rich and drinks champagne. Suddenly, a flashlight gets out and disappears at the same moment, but it shows that Zach isn't interested. He goes out and enjoys his time, and we see him achieving our dream, all of us, after the mall started buying the clothes he wanted. Of course, without paying or a cent. And in the toy shop, Zach plays this game. Then he had an idea in mind, which is that he is traveling by train. Then he plays pool, and acts as if there's another person playing with him. Night, he decides to go home after a stressful day, and changes his demolition. But he decides to wear the clothes of a woman. On television, he sees someone talking about conspiracy theory. We find him blowing up the television with Venice. And because the shot is severe, he dares behind and falls into the chair. Now Zach is starting to take on the role and acting like someone is actually conspiring against him. He plays radio tapes on large speakers, with recordings of people's interaction with presidents, and put pictures of the presidents of the world who died in garden. Then he comes out of the balcony and speaks as if he were the president of the world. And in the midst of his integration in the role that he plays and sells it, and suddenly electricity is cut off everywhere. The second day we see Zach standing in a football field and wearing women's clothes, and then he breaks into a church with him rifle, and it will be looking for a specific person. And often he lost his mind and turns on the god. Zach stands in front of the statue and threatens the person around. If he doesn't go out, he'll kill the child. And he starts shooting, and we see him after that riding a big excavator and coming out of a building and stepping on a car baby. He imagines that there was really a child in it, and he caused his death, and that he decides to commit suicide and beat himself with a gun for what he did. After that, he will bring a large generator to turn on the light in the house. And when he is in the market, he buys garden supplies and imagines that he heard the sound of someone, but he takes the idea out of his mind and walks away. Zach will move too. This is another house overlooking the sea, and he sits in front of a computer. Then suddenly a voice is heard, and then he finds a girl coming in with a gun. But she sees him scared. So the girl named John tells him that he is not a real gun, and he is not afraid. Then Zach and John sit and talk together about what happened to them. At some point, they woke up and found all the people disappeared. They were talking to some extent. Joan slept on the sofa. The second day in the morning, the two of them talk a little while. They are preparing the car. Joan shopped his place because he drank a lot at night. And when they stopped in the car after a while, they met someone who had an accident in the car and came out of the front glass and died. Another one is dead, and she is calling for help. It is clear that they were alive after the accident. After that, they decided to move and drive to the hotel to stay overnight. At that time, they thought that they could find other people who still lived with them on the planet. That's why the next day they decide to look for other people who live, and each one takes a car and moves alone. For a moment, both feel strange at the same time. At dinner, they discuss together what happened the next day. Zach wakes up terrified at the sound of the phone ringing, and Joan is talking like a receptionist opening the door and making breakfast for Zach on the bed. And they continue their usual mission of searching for other people on the planet. It starts at the hospital. Zach parks the car and records information about a scientific experiment they were trying to apply, and that they changed the charge of the electron, and the result was that they changed the foundation of the Earth. He became unstable on his way back to Joan. Another time, he will find a dead end. He walks from another road and finds him also blocked, and he returns in Arabic when a large truck comes out and gets in his way by bringing Zach closer to the car, and along a man wearing a mask and a gun comes out of it. Zach tries to convince him that he is alone in the world to be guided, but this person whose name is Addie knows that he is lying to him. After he hears Joan's voice on the radio, he will return only to the house and hide behind the column and come out to them after he is sure that there is no danger on their part. Being very hilarious, finally found people living like him. We see the three, and they are spending a sweet time together, and at night he tells them about what happened to him at the time of the accident, which is that he was fighting with his friend and his friend drowned in the water until he died, and his soul kept seeing what is happening from above. But suddenly something strange happens and a light appears, then it comes back to life again. But this time he doesn't find his friend, or anyone living at that time. Aspects that say that she had an accident like him and she saw the same light before. Zach remembers what happened to him that day, and that he took a lot of pills, and this way the three were close to death at the time of the accident, and this is the reason that they are the only ones still living, and the rest disappeared. After that, we see Addie playing the piano and Zach and Joan dancing next to him, and then they sleep. Joan wakes up and notices Addie's disappearance. But when you go out, you find him standing next to a grave, so you come back and continue sleeping. The second day in the morning, Zach studies the oscillations of the sun, and at the same time, Joan and Addie are running on the road. Then Joan knows that Eddie killed his friend's wife. Because of that, his friend wanted to kill him, and when she asks him why I killed her, he says I should have done that, and she starts to see him in a way different and afraid of him. Then Zach decides that they are moving from a place and preparing the car. And when he tries to explain the situation to Joan, she is upset by Addie, and this makes her refuse to talk to him. Eddie objects to Zach's decision and tells him that you won't walk us in your mood. On the way, he hears the recording Zach still recorded about sun changes. Then he hits his car and takes it down. Joan then takes the gun from the car and fires a shot in the air to stop the noose. Zach then explains to them that something is wrong in the electric torch project that he was working on, and that he knew this from the beginning, so he decided to commit suicide. And on the way, Zach tells them that this project was invented by the Americans from the beginning, but they hid a lot of information from him. That's why when they wanted to implement it, a terrible defect occurred. However, He doesn't believe Zach's words because he hid it from them from the beginning, and they deliver 3 to a building. There is a purifier. Zach projects specific data on the device. He tells Joan that the incident will happen again at 6 o'clock in the morning, but suddenly a strange need arises and Zach Wade disappears. And after a while, things will return to normal. Then Eddie tells them that he has a plan, and they blow up the door of the big store. When they enter, they find many boxes containing dynamite. They put the boxes in a big truck. At night, they move to the satellite research station. On the way, Joan tells Zach why his friend killed him. They then deliver to a fuel truck blocking the road. Eddie drives her, and they continue on their way again. They will be closer, get to the station. Zach learns from a device with him that the temperature at the research station is too high. This means that if the dynamite is close to there, it will explode. That's why the 3 continue their way in Zach's car, until they come to a small tower near the station. And Zach tells them he has equipment he can use will help him get a dynamite truck into the station. And all this talk with a remote control. And he leaves them in the tower and walks alone to answer the equipment. After a while, they hear the sound of the truck approaching. And they're surprised that Zach is driving it. And he enters it in a direction. The station and the ground are collapsing beneath it. Zach presses his button and detonates the dynamite. The whole plant explodes and is destroyed. And see that the light accident is repeated again. The movie ends with Zach waking up on a beach with a strange cloud in the sky, and it blooms behind the planet Saturn.